Well, welcome to another week of Youth Assembly. Well, today we start with how Nigeria can win the war against insurgency. Good to have you here this Monday morning. I hope your morning is going well as mine is. My name is Sylvia Ishebe. Well, as I said earlier, today we are looking at how Nigeria can win the war against insurgency. Yes. That is our focus today. Now, this past week has seen Boko Haram kill about 49 farmers in Zambari village, a community in Borno State, marking yet another hideous milestone in the organization's increasing violent campaign against the Nigerian state, which has lasted for over a decade. Now, the attack led to various calls by concerned Nigerians for the president to review the counter-insurgency strategy of the military to stem the incessant attacks of communities in the northwestern region of the country by the terror group. Our guest today is Mr. Olatubosun. We have here Mr. Olatubosun Obolorinwa. Good to have you, Mr. Olatubosun.
Thank you very much. Nice to have you.
Okay, he is a security expert, and we also have Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is a security risk management consultant. Welcome, Dr. Kabir.
Thank you. Good morning, Sylvia.
Thank you. So our focus is on winning the war against insurgency in Nigeria. The nation is still yet to recover from what happened in Zambari village, the massacre that went on there in Borno State. What do you think went wrong there, Mr. Abolarinwa?
Well, we can't really say nothing. We can't really say something went wrong there. The place is under the conflict zone, where state of emergency has been declared more than 8 years ago. There has been ongoing killings. There has been ongoing kidnappings. So it's a conflict zone that the government has not been able to return peace and normalcy or civil rule or authority to. It is unfortunate, and I want to condole with the family of those who lost their life. It's not an easy incident, and I pray that God will give them the fortitude to bear those loss. But it's part of an ongoing problem that we've not been able to find a solution to. I wouldn't want to blame the government. Terrorism is a global phenomenon, but the attitude, the political will, and the response of the government is something that we still need to get right. It's not a time for pointing accusing finger or apportioning blames to the people, to the government, or to the soldier. It only signifies one thing, and that we are yet to get the fight against insurgency right needs to be done.
Okay, so at this point, I'll introduce Dr. Kabir to go ahead with his own points. What do you think went wrong in Zambari village? I mean, it's over a decade, that this insurgency and the attacks happening in Maiduguri has gone on. So in the government's fight against this terrorist group, why do you think it's been very difficult to defeat Boko Haram in spite of the counter-insurgency campaigns of the Nigerian military?
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. The challenge we have is, I think, one of time, because this topic is really very wide. But I'll try and summarize what went wrong, building on what Mr. Olatubosun has said. The government security is in the exclusive list, so the federal government has a huge role to play. And as we are all aware, it has declared a state of emergency in Borno State and the parts of the northeast. It has also created the Operation Lafiya Dole Theater Command, which is the military theater command to handle counter-terrorism in that region. Now, there are two divisions, Division 7 and Division 8 military divisions in the northeast, and that are meant to protect ordinary civilians in the location. But then when you wake up and you see 43 people or even more killed, then you ask the question, in spite of all of this military presence, two divisions, why are civilians still being killed? Now, the second point is that the state also has its own initiatives. It has what it's called the Civilian JTF. I don't know the exact number of the operatives under civilian JTF, but they are found in virtually every community in Borno State, all supporting the military with intelligence, supporting them in different forms. Then this current governor, Professor Babagana Zulu, when he came in 2019, he initiated what he called the Agro Ranger scheme, where he would employ, people from the state, then engage the military and the civil defense to train them. And their primary objective is to protect farmers. He also had several other initiatives at the state level to ensure better protection for the civilians. So, in direct response to your question, what went wrong is the inability of all of these things I've mentioned to come together and provide like an envelope within which the ordinary citizen in Borno State will now, feel safe. These insurgents, because it's guerrilla tactics, they are able to find vulnerabilities within this security structure that the federal government has and that the state government has, and still go out and carry out an attack. Now, just to give the listener a sense of what actually happened on the 28th when those 43 were killed, that particular location is about 20 kilometers outside the city center of Maiduguri, the capital of the state. Now, one of the vulnerabilities that is being exploited by these bad guys is the fact that once you are outside the city center, then there is no security presence, more or less. So people who go out, like if you are traveling from Maiduguri to another town, even Damaturu, which is in Yobe State, is the biggest route in the state, there are constantly roadblocks by these bad guys. Likewise, if you go farming 5 kilometers outside the town, then it's less, the security presence is less. So these guys are able to come out and carry out attacks. I know the listener may be a bit surprised. How come, but that's the reality, unfortunately, on the ground.
Exactly.
So,
With that assumption, saying that because it's at the outskirts of the city center, people are more vulnerable, and there are no enough security officials. Isn't that a loophole for them to thrive and do and carry out their hideous crimes?
exactly. Now, one of the reasons why this loophole, exists is last year the military created what it called super camps. Before then, it had forward operating bases. These are small military formations, that are subsisting side by side, more or less, with each community. So, but unfortunately, these forward operating bases were being run down by the bad guys. And when they run them down, they raid their armory and steal their weapons. So they ended up, getting weapons with which they were now using to attack both the military and the civilians. So the military collapsed these forward operating bases into super camps. And that now means less military formations to protect civilians, but again, bigger camps that were more difficult for these bad guys to overrun. So on the one hand, you've got this positive development, but then unfortunately, it created this other negative situation where the bad guys were now able to attack civilians more. Now, unfortunately, we have not seen adequate response by the military, because the military will now need two things as a result of this super camp. They will now need mobility to be able to deploy quickly, and they will also need surveillance, in the sense, aerial surveillance specifically, that will give them an idea of where the bad guys are. And then with this speedy mobility that I mentioned, they can now deploy quickly. So in the case of Zabarmari, where the farmers were killed, this is a marshy terrain where there are no roads actually to get to that marshy terrain. Remember the farm right there, and so it's really marshy. And these bad guys were active there. Unfortunately, from what we heard, they sort of lied to the villagers, the farmers, and told them they wanted to either preach them or whatever, and use that to slaughter them. So it wasn't really a very visible thing that would now allow the military to know what was happening. But that's not excusing the fact that the civilians were not protected. All I'm trying to paint is that this is guerrilla tactics. And because it's guerrilla tactics, it's very difficult to, to use military force to manage guerrilla tactics. those who have won against guerrilla tactics use especially the resilience of the community, because they are the ones who are engaging side by side with this guerrilla warfare. So if you build their resilience, then in this instance, as an example, those farmers should have known that going outside their city center and going into this vulnerable location would present a risk to them. So either they informed the military before they go out, or they informed the state level initiative, either the civilian JTF or even
I
the
mean,
agro rangers.
they went in the numbers. There were quite a number of them that went together, and there is this kind of protection you feel when you have a large number of men trying to go to their farms and make
Sylvia,
ends meet.
one magazine of an
Yes.
AK-47 has 30 bullets.
Hmm.
So one magazine alone, by one person holding an AK-47, can kill 30 people. So imagine a situation where you have probably 20, 30 or more of these insurgents, all of them holding AK-47. Multiply that by 30. And in Nigeria, usually when you see an AK-47, there are two magazines tied together. So one person has 60 bullets. That's on the average, assuming he doesn't have a spare one that he can bring out to use. So one person effectively can kill 60 persons. But in this instance, they actually slaughtered them. They beheaded them, really, unfortunately.
A very unfortunate incident. But what other option do we have? Does the government have at this point that is worth considering? I mean, since the attacks, Nigerians have been giving their opinions to the president on the best way to tackle this Boko Haram menace. And the state governor is not exempted here. Babagana Umaru Zulum has actually suggested or advised the government to use mercenaries. Mr. Olatubosu Abalariwa, what do you think about that option, using mercenaries to fight insurgency in Nigeria or in the Northeast?
Well, I would like to respond. I would like to respond to two things. One, the idea of using mercenaries to fight insurgency to be moving forward. For how long are we going to be using mercenaries? For how long are we going to be spending money on those kind of things? For how long are the mercenaries going to stay? What is the implication of using mercenaries to our security and national integrity, interior integrity? So we need to look at it that way. But the other point I want to make based on the question you asked is that, you see, we missed something out at the very onset of our fight against terrorism, which later leads to massive insecurity. The insecurity we are dealing with, or insurgency, is not only in Maiduguri at the moment. It is spreading everywhere and anywhere. The road from Abuja to Kaduna is not safe. Kaduna to Zaria is not safe. Abuja to Lokoja to Kene to Kaba is not safe. There are packages of attacks on farmers all over Nigeria, in the Middle Belt and all those places. You see, the insurgency, or the bad guys, like my colleague Radley says, has managed to put the government in a reactive position, a reactive mode, rather than us to be in a proactive mode. You see, they will continue to come to look for a way of bringing government down to their knees. They want to render the state of Nigeria ungovernable. So if the terrorists want to go into a maternity home to slaughter 20 babies, they will do so in order to bring the world on their knees. They've done
but how can the
before at
government do
Chibok.
this now?
They did it
How can
at
they go about it so they are not at the beck and call of these insurgents?
We need to give people more power to be able to protect themselves.
How
we
do you
need
mean?
to train people on. Now we need to give people training. The campaign for people to be security conscious, what to do, who to call, how exactly to react, is still underused. People don't know who to call, when to call, how far is the nearest protection base from where you are, where should you go, where shouldn't you go. Shouldn't be a reactive mode, the way the military, the presidency reacted to the incident recently that the place has not been cleared. Were they aware of this? Is there any signboard asking people not to go to a particular place? Are there places where we are villages that we ask people not to evacuate? The return to civil rule initiative started by the government about 4 years ago, what has happened to it? We can't just leave everything to the army alone. Where are the police? Are the state of Borno, Maiduguri being policed the way it should be policed now? If not, why? So those are the areas that government really need to, restoring civil authority, educating people on how to get themselves protected, give the power of information and communication back to the people so that they can know what to do to protect themselves. My colleague just rightly said, within 30 seconds, it takes an AK-47 with 60 rounds of ammunition inside it to create another mayhem that is going to bring the country down to its knee, and will start flowing that way. We need to do something about that, educate the people, create an awareness. And if there is anywhere we need to evacuate, please let us do so. I also want to appeal to the governor of Borno State through this media not to be hasty in returning people from IDP camp to their homes, because it doesn't look as if the state is safe yet for people to return to their home from the look of things.
But this same governor you just mentioned is the one advising the government to use mercenaries. Let me ask now at this point, Dr. Kabir. But Mr. Olatuboso is of the opinion that mercenaries are not needed. Well, how long would they fight with mercenaries? But he is the one, the governor is the one living in the States, knowing the security situation better, I presume, about the state, asking for this option. What do you think about this option? Is it worth trying?
Okay, so mercenaries are an option in any military warfare. We need to take that. It's not that this is the first time anyone was suggesting the use of mercenary. In fact, the reality is that in Nigeria's history, mercenaries have been used. The most recent one is under President Goodluck Jonathan, when he brought in the South African STEP. That's the name of the private contractor, and that private contractor brought in soldiers, and they fought in the Northeast, and they made some successes here and there. But I agree rightly with Olatubosun to the extent that mercenaries, forgive my use of this word, are prostitutes. You pay them money, they serve you for a purpose, and then imagine the next person paying them money to now use the secret they gather from the time they spend in your country to now sabotage your country. They will do it because that's what they're after. It's about money for them. And I mean, all over the world, there are a couple of countries that are notorious for producing mercenaries. One of them is South Africa, where we got the last one we came from. Now, because of the consequences of mercenaries, they've actually legislated against loose use of mercenaries. So it's now a bit regimented. But the point is, mercenaries have a function in military warfare, and we've used them in the past. Now, right now, as a security professional, my honest opinion is I don't think we have reached the stage where we should start thinking of deploying mercenaries. And I will quickly tell you my reason. Okay. The country has what we call the National Counterterrorism Strategy 2016. It's supposed to be the roadmap for implementing our counterterrorism strategy. It is a document that is in the office of the National Security Advisor. And I'll quickly mention to you the 5 things that document is supposed to achieve. I'll be as quick as possible because I know we have time.
Because people have also called for the review of that strategy.
Well, we're not even implementing it. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'll quickly mention the things it's supposed to achieve. Number 1, forestall. So forestall means prevention by engaging the public through sustained sensitization campaigns and the radicalization program. Olatubosun made that point. It's critical. Are we doing that now? Unfortunately, we're not doing enough. The people don't yet know the content of that document. Number 2, secure. Ensuring the protection of lives and property. Key national infrastructure and services, including national interests worldwide. Are we doing enough of that? Unfortunately, no. Number 3, identify, investigating and bringing violent extremist offenders to justice. Are we doing enough of that? Unfortunately, no. As we're talking, there are 2,000 suspects currently in Kainji that are awaiting trial. They've been awaiting trial for almost 7 years now. So number 4, prepare, adequately preparing the populace in order to mitigate the consequence of terrorist incidents. When did the Barmari incident happen? the government was being blamed. If this was being done, it would have been the terrorists that would be blamed. And imagine the significance when the entire population of Borno, about 4 million of them, now start blaming the terrorists. It will go a long way towards telling them that what they are doing is wrong. Instead, it is the government that is now being blamed. So we have not done enough.
I don't get that. You mean the population in Borno State don't blame Boko Haram? I mean, we know what they're doing wrong, and people are calling them out.
Sylvia,
Yes.
let's situate this with very good examples. How many times did you hear the people blaming the terrorists when they killed those 43 people? Instead, it was the government. In fact, in Abuja here, they even called for impeachment of Mr. President. That's the point I'm making. We are misdirecting. Yes, the government has a responsibility to protect Nigerians, but more importantly, the people doing the killings should be condemned. Before we condemn government, let's first condemn the people doing the killing. So the point of this particular element of the national counterterrorism strategy is that Nigerians should be educated enough to understand that what the guys are doing, the bad guys are doing, is bad, and it should be condemned, even while they are asking for better protection from government. And this has been proven worldwide, where rural populations condemn the actions of terrorists, it has an effect on what they are doing.
Okay, so let me bring in Mr.
Last one. Implement. The last element of the national counterterrorism is implement, and it says devising a framework to effectively mobilize and sustain a coordinated cross-governmental population-centered effort. Now, why is this important? Sylvia, we have 27 ministries, departments, and agencies that are meant to implement this counter-terrorism strategy. 27 of them. Only 5 of them belong to the military. Currently, only the military is implementing the strategy. Where are the other 22?
And where is that supposed to come from? The other 22, all things being equal.
The police, as an example, customs, immigration, name them. All those paramilitary organizations, they have a role. The AK-47 that we're talking about, is it manufactured in Nigeria? No, it is manufactured abroad. How is it coming into Nigeria? Through our borders. Who is supposed to man the border? Customs and immigration. Are they doing enough of manning our border? No. So every agency has a role to play in this counter-terrorism strategy. It's not just the military. And that brings us to the question of the service chiefs. When I hear people say, sack the service chiefs. And my question is not that won't be enough. We need to look at the entire 27 and see where they are not doing enough. If you just concentrate on the military and leave the other 22, then believe me, even if it's superheroes, Superman, Captain America, you appoint him, or what's the guy in Panther? You appoint him as yes, you appoint him as service chief. He won't do enough.
I think at this point, it looks as if we need those kind of mercenaries now, Captain America and Black Panther. May so rest in peace. But let me hear from you, Mr. Abolariwa. What do you make of all Dr. Kabir has said, and with the call to sack the service chief, and him saying Borno people or Nigerians are not calling out on Boko Haram enough as they call out the government?
Yeah, Dr. Kabir has said it all.
Okay.
Let me just put it that way. Let me just add the said. We are missing out on a very, very important part. We are not forestalling. We are not carrying people along. We are not carrying all the agencies along in the sensitivity of counterterrorism. If you Google it now, American, USA, South African counterterrorism initiative, you won't find only the military there. You read the CAN, the Boy Scout, the Girls Guide, the new National Union of Road Transport Workers, everybody will be carried along. Everybody has a role to play. Primary, tertiary, secondary, and tertiary education system have a role to play. We are not carrying all those people along. And as long as the military think they are the only one that can do this, I think we will continue to get it wrong. Let me give you an instance. Ensuring that the perpetrator of criminal act against the citizens of Nigeria, such as terrorists, get justice, It's not something we're looking at the moment. The government has already made terrorists heroes. Where is Kabiru Sokoto that was arrested about 7 years ago? Is he still undergoing trial? Why is he still undergoing trial? What is happening? All the people that were arrested after them for corruption and other purposes have been tried. Dasuki has been tried. Mena has just been arrested and is facing trial. Why is Kabiru Sokoto not being tried? To send signal on what's happening. When Oka was arrested, he escaped to South Africa and he was arrested over there and is facing jail time now. How many terrorists are facing jail terms in Nigeria? We need to ask ourselves this question, but what are we having? We are having a situation whereby we have something we call repentant terrorists, and we are integrating them back into the society. If I'm part of the youth, I think it may be better to join the terrorists so that I can be integrated back and given scholarship to study abroad. And that brings back the question of why the people of Borno State are no longer...
It hasn't gotten to that yet.
No longer blaming the government
to join a terrorist group that do such a thing.
It's already happening.
Massacre people.
But it's already happening. It's already happening if we look at it critically. The terrorists seem to be gaining ground and popularity increasing.
So what's the best way the military can actually cooperate with the communities now? You know, you've talked about working hand in hand with the different groups or heads of these groups that you guys have identified. What is the best way to cooperate, especially with the people at the grassroots in Borno State, for example, to fight this insurgency?
Ever good
is that for me?
Strategy.
The best way to handle that is to go back to this terrorism strategy by the National Security Advisor's Office. Let us implement that to the fullest and let's see where it gets us before we start thinking of which other way. That has not been implemented. It's just a piece of paper sitting on this table. The moment we are able to implement that, it will bring us back to the position where we can think of how to review whether it's working or not. But we have that. Let us.
Okay, Mr. Valoriwa. Let's hear from you, Doctor. Go ahead.
Yes, I was saying that just like he said, implementing that document would allow us to win the heart and minds of the people. Every counterterrorism strategy that is effective would have succeeded in winning the hearts and minds of the people. The people need to understand what you are trying to do, what you are trying to achieve. I always give this example. The military will block routes. So the major route that allows you to go to Maiduguri from the northeast, from Gombe to Bauchi, Yobe, is the Damaturu Maiduguri route. Now the military will go and block it. As an expert, I know why they are blocking it. But the residents of those towns, do they understand why the military is blocking it? Now, the military would also tell them every time they come to a checkpoint, they have to come down from their vehicles. Sylvia, pregnant women will come down from their vehicles and trek sometimes for up to 5-10 minutes under the heavy sun. If you've been to Maiduguri, you would have an idea how hot the sun is. Those people would trek. Now, how in God's name would those people be happy with the military? They are not likely to be happy with the military because these things have not been explained to them. So even though there is a purpose for why these things are being done, you have to explain to the people, let the people embrace it. Now, it is only through implementing this national counterterrorism strategy, and not just by the military, by everyone, including the Ministry of Information, because the role of advocacy is by the Ministry of Information and the National Orientation Agency. They need to also embrace this document. The last part that I mentioned, which is implement, talks about a cross-governmental, population-centered effort. Cross-governmental. I want to emphasize this point. So not just if the federal government take down that document to the state government. When Governor Zulum spoke about mercenaries, I doubt if he's aware of this document. Even if he's aware of it, have the content been explained to him? And for that purpose, I'm praying and I'm begging that you take this interview to him so that he understands that we already have the solution. And he's doing amazingly well.
So what is this solution that we have?
This document, Sylvia, it's our solution. Honestly,
but they should be aware that these things are in there. But like you said, the implementation is the problem.
Yes, and I'll tell you why the implementation is the problem. When this document was developed, the implementation framework was not developed. So that means the Office of the National Security Advisor, and to that extent, I think you should also share this with your minister. He needs to talk to that office. Let them come up with an implementation framework that would have what we call key performance indicators, so that a review can be done periodically, like Olatubosin mentioned. Where are we? What have we done in terms of implementation? What are the gaps? How do we correct it? This is not rocket science.
At the point where Nigerians are now calling for the sack of the service chief, since they can implement what is in the counterterrorism.
It's not in their place to implement it. I am emphasizing this point. Cross-governmental. It's the cross-governmental approach that first off, the coordinator is the Office of the National Security Advisor. It will shock you to know that there is a coordinator counter-terrorism in that office. It is his role to implement this document. But I mean, how many Nigerians have even heard about him, whether he exists or not? So we need to take a step back and ask ourselves, why do we spend so much resources in developing beautiful documents and then we don't implement them? Then, of course, like I said, cross-governmental. The executive arm of government has a role to play. The legislative arm of government has a role to play, and the judicial arm. The prosecution of those 2,000 plots, including the Kabiru Sokoto that Olatubosin mentioned, it's not the executive or the legislative arm of government that will do it. It's the judicial arm of government. So it's a cross-governmental approach, including both the federal, the state, and to an extent the local government. I want to wake up in a Nigeria that the market woman who is selling tatashe in the market, if you approach her and ask her, she will tell you, yes, I'm aware of my role. How I can contribute to the counter-terrorism strategy. And if you ask me, how can she contribute? I just made the point that condemning the actions of the terrorists goes a long way. Before we condemn government, let's spend time condemning their actions. When they kill 43 people, let's, as a nation, all of us speak with one voice, saying what you did is wrong. You cannot go and meet innocent people and kill. Now, when we finish condemning them, then we can now ask government, why didn't you protect those 43 persons? Now, that is counter-terrorism.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. Mr. Barry, we're back to the youths. So you mentioned the youths earlier. So this question is for you. How do you think the government can go about countering the ideology of Boko Haram in order to make it difficult for them to even recruit young people into their fold?
Yeah, the youths are very, very important catalysts in the fight against any form of insecurity in any country. And God has blessed Nigeria with a very, very huge population of youths. I think the government should find a way of using the youth instead of fighting the youth. Recently, the youth used the power of social media to bring the country to a halt when they were doing hashtag #EndSARS. How many other hashtags can the government encourage the youth to use the social media to fight against in various languages to reach various youth groups? National Youth Service Corps alone in a year, if I am in the position of government, I can deploy them against counterterrorism initiative in the area of using social media in various languages to communicate and send necessary information across the youth on how they can work against, fight against, speak against radicalization and terrorism, with the aim of ending unnecessary loss of life. They can help us to campaign. Every youth are on Twitter, they are on Instagram, Facebook, everywhere. We can actually use them. The Ministry of Youth Affairs can actually step up and engage them. We can create a t-shirt that says something about it in various languages and distribute it in every area that is affected. We can actually have a day at our borders, airport, seaport, road borders, that will be doing counterterrorism initiative. I don't know when was the last time you went to an airport and saw that there is any counterterrorism initiative going on that will sensitize you to want to do something about terrorism, to stay aware, to be vigilant, and all those things. So the government really needs to try and use the youth. The youth are powerful. The youth cannot be crushed. So let us, rather than fighting them or seeing them as monster, let us see how we can engage them in the fight against insecurity generally, not only terrorism or
So okay, thank you so
insurgency.
much. Okay, Doctor, Mr. Bolariwa. Back to you, Doctor. So it's been widely rather, I beg your pardon, widely reported that the president will be meeting with the National Assembly members to address them on the insecurity in the North West. What are your expectations from that meeting?
I am hoping that the president will use the opportunity to remind Nigerians of this document, National Counterterrorism Strategy, take ownership of the fact that that document exists. And then, of course, like I said, it wasn't being implemented, 100%. And so use the opportunity to reassure Nigerians that he will give that document attention and priority, and he will bring on board all the 27 agencies that are supposed to be involved in the implementation of that document. That document also recognizes the role of civil society organizations, religious leaders, name them, everyone in society. So I'm hoping that Mr. President will emphasize that. I'm also hoping that Mr. President would talk about coordination within the national security architecture. Currently, that's one of the challenges. All of these organizations are operating sometimes, in an unhealthy rivalry situation. They are operating in silos. They don't cooperate with one another, and so we're not seeing their effectiveness. Then, lastly, I'm hoping that Mr. President will talk about monitoring and evaluation within the security architecture, so that every time we can see through metrics. And metrics is numbers. We can see through numbers that would tell us a certain either one of these 27 agencies is not performing effectively. Mr. President will change the leadership of that one organization or two, or even if it's the entire 27. There's nothing wrong if they are not performing to change them. I'm not comfortable with this overemphasis on the military. The military is not, and I want to emphasize this point, not responsible for internal security issues in Nigeria, and most of the issues we have are internal security. When we have an external aggression, and hopefully we'll not have one, that is when we talk about the military. But currently, our issues are homegrown, they are internal, and it is the military should take a backseat and allow the civil security. So these are the kind of messages I'm hoping to hear from Mr. President when he appears at the National Assembly.
Okay, Mr. Latibosu, what do you want to take out from what the meeting the president will be having with the National Assembly? What do you expect from him on that day?
Well, I expect the president, just like my colleague has said across the studio, that I expect the president to try and make use of the counterterrorism document and talk to us on how this can be best implemented. I also expect the president to try and work to address various state governors in the affected areas all over the country to try and make best use of the security votes they've been getting. You see, they can also implement part of this counterterrorism document. They can invite experts like Dr. Kabiru, like myself, to come and see how we can implement it in their states. The military alone, police alone cannot do it. We are here. We want to work. We have the knowledge. We have been responsible for how they've been trained and how they've been getting their equipment and other stuff. Why can't we help them to implement this kind of document in states? We can't leave it to the army alone. We can't leave it to the military alone. We can't leave it to the navy alone. We have to try and do our bit. So let each government try and utilize the security vote they have to implement the counterterrorism document which is available at the NSA, and see how it can better the lives and of people and properties of people with the men.
All right. How can Nigeria win the war against insurgency? That has been our focus on today's edition of Youth Assembly. And yes, we have had experts right here answering the questions as it borders our security in Nigeria. We had Mr. Latubosu Obalariwa, a security expert, and also Dr. Kabir Adamu, who is a security management consultant. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for doing this with us today.
Thank you so much, Sylvia, and I hope
Thank
we
you.
wake up tomorrow to see at least this thing has come to an end.
Yes, yes, that is our prayer for Nigeria. Well, all you have to do is to know and share this video. Know that you are a part of this call to fight insurgency in Nigeria. You have a role to play. So share this video and tell a friend to tell a friend to watch this and learn more as we win the war against insurgency in Nigeria. My name is Sylvia Ishebe, and this show was produced by Ihoma UKJ. We'll be back tomorrow for another interesting edition of Youth Assembly. Remember to listen to us on www.clickniger.net. Have a fantastic day and see you tomorrow. Bye, gentlemen.
Thank you. Bye, Sylvia.